In this video I'm going to go over the product and quotient rule and kind of go over some examples of how they're sometimes assessed or sometimes asked on the AP exam. The first example just gives us a set table of values for the function f and g, and then he also given some values of the derivative of both f and g. And the first question is going to be finding the derivative's value of f times g at 1. I have to rely upon the product rule for the derivative to this, and I'm going to evaluate it at 1. So this means I'm going to take f of 1 and multiply by the derivative of g, which is g prime, plus g of 1 times f prime of 1. And then from there it's just a matter of looking up the table values for these particular values. So f of 1 is given to me as 4. G prime of 1 is given to me as negative 2, plus g of 1 is negative 1, and then f prime of 1 is 3. And then it's just a matter of multiplying and adding this together. This is going to be negative 8 minus 3, which is going to give me a negative 11. Alright, so without really knowing what f and g are as far as what functions they are, you just have to rely upon the product rule definition for this derivative and then look up the table of values. Next example is now h is going to be a quotient of f divided by g, and I want to find the derivative at 3. So similarly, I have to rely upon the definition of the quotient rule, which says g of x stays the same. G of 3 stays the same, so I'm going to plug in, I'm going to look up the value at 3. So g of 3 multiplied by f prime of 3 minus f of 3 g prime of 3, then all divided by the denominator squared, so all divided by g of 3 squared. Again, this is just the derivative quotient rule definition. And then just like before, I look up these values on the table. G of 3 is given as 3. F prime of 3 is given as 1. Minus f of 3 is 2. And then g prime of 3 is 8. And that's all going to be divided by g prime of 3, which is in fact 3 squared. And then again, lastly, you just have to multiply this out and subtract. So it's going to be 3 minus 16, all divided by 9, which is negative 13 over 9. And that is my derivative value for h is negative 13 over 9. So these ones are pretty straightforward. If you're given a table of values, just rely upon the definition of the derivative and look up the values accordingly. Next example is going to be with a graph of two functions. So we're going to use the graphs of f and g to find what looks like to be a product, and I'll put up the graph of f and g. And I'll kind of zoom in here. Now the graph of the function f is an absolute value. And do pay attention to the points it's passing through, so I want you guys to draw this graph accurately. And the same thing for g, it's going to be a piecewise. So pause it, make sure you have this sketched accurately, and I'll go over how to find the derivative. For part A, they want us to find the product, and using the product rule, m prime of 0, it's going to be f of 0, g prime of 0, plus g of 0, f prime of 0. Now the way I'm going to find these values is f of 0 is just the function's value of f at 0, which is 6. Now for g prime, thinking back to the initial concept of derivatives, derivatives measure the slope. So I'm going to be measuring the slope of g, which is the piecewise, at 0. So I'm back from algebra 1, or algebra 2 even, The way you measure the slope is just count at 0 the rise over the run. So the piecewise, the rise is going to be up 1, 2, 3 over 2. So this has a slope of 3 over 2. Now g of 0 is the function's value at 0, which is -2. And then lastly, the derivative, the slope of f, which is the slope of the piece of the absolute value one at 0. Well, the slope of this one looks like from here to here, it's going down 1, 2 over 1, so it's going to be -2 over 1, or just -2. Then from there, it's just a matter of, again, simplifying this. This is going to be 18 divided by 2, which is 9, minus 4. So this is going to give you 5 for your derivative. So m prime of 0 is equal to 5. Part B now, they want us to find the slope of the tangent line at x equal to 4 for p of x, and again p of x is the quotient, and so the derivative here at 4 is going to be, the denominator stays the same, the derivative of the top minus the top stays the same, times the derivative of the bottom, so f prime, and it's all going to be over the denominator squared, so f of 4 quantity squared. And just like before, I go ahead and I look at the value for f of 4. So going back to this graph, let's see. F of 4 is the absolute value one. So I'm looking at 4, and it looks like the height of it is 2. So this is going to be 2 for f of 4. G prime of 4. Since g is the piecewise, I want to measure the slope of 4. And it looks like it has the exact same slope as the 4, which is up 1, 2, 3, and then over 2. So the slope passing through 4 is 3 over 2 minus g of 4, the value of g at 4 is 4. And then f prime of 4, the slope now at 4, it looks like it's going to be the slope of this piece of the absolute value, and that's going to be up 2 over 1. So the slope of this one of f is 2 over 1, and it's all going to be divided by f of 4, which is 2. And then now you have to simplify all this. This is going to give you a 3 minus 8, all divided by 2 squared, which is 4. This is going to give you negative 5 over 4. So you can say that your tangent slope is going to be equal to negative 5 over 4. Alright, last one is going to be f times g prime evaluated at 5. I go ahead and again use the product rule. It's going to be f of 5, g prime of 5, plus g of 5 times f prime of 5. F of 5 again is the value, so it looks like the value of the absolute value at 5. Oops, let me put this back over here. The value of the absolute value function at 5 is 4. G prime of 5 is the derivative at 5, but notice for the piecewise at 5 there's a jump. So this derivative at g does not exist. So if one part of the derivative does not exist, then the entire thing does not exist. So the answer to this one is pretty much does not exist, because the derivative at g, there was a jump, so it would not exist. So that one is done. And that's pretty much it for this video. And that's how some of the AP questions are presented as far as the product and the quotient rule.